Welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Markus Karlsson. My guest today is a living Wall Street legend and has been nicknamed the Indiana Jones of finance. Jim Rogers co-founded the Quantum Fund together with George Soros in the 1970s, and he saw it grow by more than 4,000% in a decade. Today, Jim Rogers is chief executive and chairman of Rogers Holdings and also an avid traveler, hence the Indiana Jones nickname. Welcome to France 24.
I am delighted to be here, Markus.
Now, first, let's take the temperature of the global economy. How would you characterize the global investment climate in 2012?
Well, the economy and the investment climate are two different things. Some parts of the world economy are doing well. Most parts of the world economy are not doing well, and they're going to get worse in 2013. You and your viewers should be very worried about next year and the year after.
And what's the number one worry? Is it the Eurozone? I presume it is the Eurozone.
Well, yeah, the Eurozone, the number one, I don't know. America's got serious problems, and will have very serious problems in 2013. Some of the American states are as bankrupt as Greece is. You know, America overall is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Right now, we're all watching Europe. Next year, we may very well be watching America. So you've got lots of things to worry about.
And when you say that we have a lot of things to worry about, what do you mean then exactly? What should we look out for? How bad can it become?
Well, first of all, let's for the moment exclude things like war that we should be worrying about, because there may well be some big wars, or some regional wars anyway, coming up, especially in the Middle East, as you well know. A lot of Americans would like to bomb Iran. The Israelis apparently would like to bomb Iran. So who knows what may happen in the Middle East. But let's just talk about the more economic things. In America, we've had economic recessions and slowdowns every 4 to 6 years since the beginning of the Republic. You can add, next year is 4 to 6 years. And it's the year after an election. During election years, the government spends a lot of money trying to get reelected. And if you look at what's happening in states where they're key to the election, employment's going down because unemployment's going down because Mr. Obama's spending a lot of money in those states. So some things look good in the U.S. But underneath, Marcus, there's huge debt, and the situation is getting worse. The economy is going to slow down next year, and you're going to be reporting a lot about problems in the U.S. in 2013.
For a diehard investor such as yourself, are all of these problems and potential problems, are they a threat or are they an opportunity?
Well, if you get it right, they're an opportunity. I happen to have sold short a lot of stocks around the world, and if the world evolves the way I see it, then I'm going to make a whole lot of money on the things that I have sold short. Selling short, as you know, is something you do when you think things will go down, when things will have problems. So if I'm right, I'll make money on my shorts.
Now, if we look then at the Eurozone crisis, because as you rightfully pointed out, that's seen as one of the worries at this stage. What happens if Eurozone leaders get it wrong? And also, what do markets actually want the Eurozone leaders to do at this stage? What would satisfy the markets?
The markets would be happy if it would go away. If somehow Mrs. Merkel could come up something would make everybody happy for a year or two, and the markets would have a big rally. The problem, Marcus, is that whatever they do to make Mrs. Merkel happy and the markets happy for a year is going to be worse down the road, because you cannot solve a problem of too much debt with more debt, Marcus, and that's what the market would like. Paper this over, Mrs. Marcus. Make everything okay. And Mrs. Marcus, as you know, has an election next year, so she wants to do the same thing. But getting everybody deeper and deeper into debt, with the debt going up, is not going to solve the problem.
It sounds then as if you're saying that the Germans, with their austerity approach, that they should stand firm, that Mrs. Merkel should say no to all of the people who say that she should engage in more stimulus measures.
She actually should. She should be even tougher than she is. If I were doing it, I promise you, I would be tougher than she is. Now, I don't have to answer to an electorate, and she does, and I don't have to answer to riots in the streets. But if I were Mrs. Merkel, I would do it even tougher than she is.
Now, you've called the Spanish banking bailout absurd. Why is that?
I was being polite. It's worse than absurd. It's much worse than absurd. No, again, the problem of too much debt cannot be solved with more debt. And if you look at the projections for nearly every country in Europe, except Estonia and maybe Iceland, everybody's piling up debt higher and higher and higher. This is not going to solve our problem. Marcus, eventually, the market runs out of other people's money, and then the whole system collapses. And then you've got disaster. Then you have catastrophe. Then you have riots in the streets. Then you have war potentially.
But let me play devil's advocate for a moment. A lot of people were saying that the Spanish banking bailout, it was the least worst of a lot of bad options, because the fact is that unemployment in Spain is already around about 25%. And they were fearful that if the Spanish banking sector were to go, then the entire Spanish economy could go as well with it.
Marcus, okay, let's say that happened. But if you don't let it happen, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when the Spanish banking system is in worse shape, when the debt is higher and higher, then it collapses, and then there's nobody to save. There's no umbrella. There's no safety net. If Spain collapsed today, there at least is some safety net. There's some umbrella somewhere to take care of people, or to attempt to take care of people. If it happens in 2 or 3 years, not even the Germans not even China can save Spain, can save Europe. And that's what I'm afraid of. That's why I'm terrified that this system is getting bigger and bigger, the debt's getting bigger and bigger, and it's all going to collapse around us.
Now, let's look away from the dark clouds for just a moment. You're an avid traveler, as I said in the introduction. You traveled around the world on a motorcycle in the beginning of the 1990s, and then 10 years later, roundabout, you traveled around the world in a Mercedes car. You've also been studying where there are economic opportunities. Where, in your mind, are those opportunities? Where do you see the most promise?
Well, I'm mainly optimistic about Asia. I moved to Asia 5 years ago because the 21st century is going to be the century of Asia, and I'm preparing my children for the 21st century. The largest creditor nations in the world now are China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. The money's in Asia. The assets are in Asia. You know who the debtors are. You can look out the window and see the debtors. You know where they are and who they are. So I'm preparing for the 21st century by moving to Asia. Some great opportunities in Asia. Myanmar is one of the most exciting countries of the world right now. North Korea has very exciting opportunities there. As far as sectors of the world economy, I'm extremely optimistic about agriculture. I mean, all these kids are getting MBAs and making terrible mistakes because finance is going to be bad. Mm-hmm. But agriculture, Marcus, great fortunes are going to be made in agriculture in the next 20 or 30 years.
A lot of people will probably be quite surprised when they hear that Jim Rogers recommends Myanmar and North Korea as investment destinations. Why those two in particular?
Well, Myanmar, let's talk first. Myanmar, in 1962, Myanmar was the richest country in Asia. They closed off for 50 years, and now they're the poorest country in Asia. But they're opening up again, just as China did in 1978. They opened up and said, let's try something new. That's what Myanmar is doing now. Myanmar's got India on the left. Its neighbors are India, China, and Thailand. It's got 60 million people, educated, disciplined, huge natural resources, huge coastlines. It's just as exciting as China was in 1978. So if you want to go and report, you can go and do a story about Myanmar.
What about North Korea then?
Well, North Korea is soon going to change too. You know, they had a new man running. He's 30 years old. He was educated in Switzerland. I assure you, he doesn't want to sit there for the next 50 years in North Korea after what he's seen. But more important, his generals, when they were lieutenants, when they were young, they went to Beijing, they went to Moscow. They saw the world. Now they go back and they're generals. And Shanghai and Beijing and Moscow have changed so much. Mm-hmm. Then these guys come home and they say, we didn't change at all. Look what's happening in Beijing. Look what happened in Moscow. So they want to change too. So it's coming. They'll probably merge with South Korea in the next few years, and then it'll be an exciting powerhouse, a new nation powerhouse.
Let's talk about what's happening in Beijing at the moment. There are a lot of concerns about the Chinese economy and that China and its economy could be heading for a so-called hard landing, that we could see an abrupt halt in Chinese growth. It doesn't sound as if you're too worried.
Well, some parts of the Chinese economy are going to have a hard landing. China, rightly, for 3 years has been trying to pop a real estate bubble, and they're doing the right thing, if you ask me. So real estate speculators are going to go broke, many of them in China. But other parts of the Chinese economy are booming. The Chinese government is spending a lot of money cleaning up the pollution, a lot of money on water in China because they have a huge water problem, agriculture. I mean, some parts of the Chinese economy are going to absolutely boom. Other parts are going to fall off the cliff and go bankrupt. Just make sure you're at the right place.
So the reports of China's demise, they're premature.
It's not going to. Some people are going to demise. There is going to be a demise in parts of China, but China could slow down. But Marcus, so what? I mean, in the 19th century, America had 15 depressions with a D. and we came out of it the most successful country in the 20th century. China will have plenty of problems. Don't think they won't.
Now, you've been talking a lot about the agricultural sector, and you're telling people that perhaps their children should become farmers. That too is quite surprising, I would suppose, to a lot of people.
Agriculture has been a disaster, Marcus, for the past 30 years. You know that the average age of farmers in America is 58. In Japan, it's 66. The average age of farmers in Canada is the oldest in recorded history. There are no farmers anymore. Unless prices go higher and farming becomes much more attractive, we're not going to have any food at any price. So you're going to see prices go much higher, prosperity go up in agriculture, attract labor and capital and management. That's where the money's going to be. Don't go to Wall Street. Don't go to the City of London. Go to the farm.
All right, we'll take your word for it. Jim Rogers, thanks very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us here at France 24.
Thank you, Marcus.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this program. Thanks for watching France 24, and do stay with us. We have more news coming your way.